The first time you sit down as a group to write, what did you have? Did you have a bottom drawer worth of stuff that you wanted to bring to it? Was everything from scratch?
Well, I know John had a bottom drawer of scripts because he had the sheep nesting in the trees script.
Yeah.
And he said that really what he wanted to do in Python was to use it. This was a script they'd written for the Frost Reports, and Jimmy Gilbert, the producer, had said, "Oh no, that's too way out. We can't do that. That's silly." And John feeling, well, I want to do a show where I can do really silly things, like the sheep nesting. So that was the first scene, I think. It was the first sketch that we filmed for Python. Me and Graham, I think it was.
Good afternoon. Afternoon. Lovely day, isn't it?
Tis that.
Are you here on holiday, or...?
No, I live here.
Oh, jolly good. I say, there's our sheep, aren't they? Yes, of course, I thought so. Why are they up in the trees?
A fair question, and one that in recent weeks has been much on my mind. Is my considered opinion that they're nesting.
Nesting? Like birds?
Exactly. Birds is the key to the old problem. It's my belief that these sheep are labouring under the misapprehension that they're birds. Observe their behaviour. Take for a start the sheep's tendency to hop about the field on their back legs. Now witness their attempts to fly from tree to tree. Notice they do not so much fly as plummet. Observe, for example, that ewe in that oak tree. She is clearly trying to teach her lamb to fly. Talk about the blind leading the blind.
But why do they think they're birds?
Another fair question. One thing is for sure, a sheep is not a creature of the air. It has enormous difficulty in the comparatively simple act of perching. As you see. As for flight, its body is totally unadapted to the problems of aviation. Trouble is, sheep are very dim.
What was a typical working day like? I mean, in terms of interaction between the whole group, was it very much like once a week, split apart, come together?
Well, it would be, as I remember, we'd sort of meet up for one of our famous meetings in a park, or not as the case, old Blenheim Palace or where it was, and we'd sit around. I mean, quite a lot of the times actually I'd meet at John's place in which is behind Harrods and Hans Crescent, and or quite often we'd meet downstairs in my dining room or the front room. Quite a lot of the first series I think was written in the front room. Which in those days was dominated by. I actually got some pictures of some of the first meetings. There's a great picture of Marx on the wall, and so we'd meet and to talk about the kind of things when we go, and then we'd sort of disappear and write for a couple of weeks, I think. And by that time, I think Mark and I were sort of writing separately but together. So we'd write for a couple of days, then we'd get together and read out what we've got and vet it and say, that's funny, that is, and that could go on here. And then very often change over stuff. I mean, maybe write a little bit together, but hardly ever wrote together. We just would swap over material and then go back and vamp it up again.
Yeah.
And then after a couple of weeks, we'd all meet together downstairs, maybe, around the table, and have the read through. And that was really the best bit of Python, really, because it was kind of really look forward to the read-throughs. You knew you were going to hear something really, really silly. And then we'd sort of decide there and then what went in the pile and what didn't. I think, and then we'd talk about the show and the shape of the show. Well, yeah, then we'd do that vetting bit, and possibly at that stage we might even start planning a few shows. And then we'd have another session and then we'd have another period like that writing, so maybe, I don't know, a month's writing or something. And then we'd hopefully have the whole 13 shows written by the end of the writing sessions. And we could then plan them, and then it'd be possible to start filming them as well. It probably wasn't quite as neat and tidy as that, but that was the kind of day game.
It was tremendous sometimes tremendous fights about material, but the strange thing was it was always about material. It was never, as I told you, I think, about who was going to act what material.
John Cleese.
We always instinctively knew, as actors, who was going to make everything work best, and that's the way it was. And if you had a light week, we just thought, well, it's fine, I've got a light week this week. There was a great sense of we were all in it together, and if the shows were funny, we all benefited, and if they weren't, we didn't. And it didn't matter particularly who got the laughs. It really didn't. But there were cat fights about the material. I remember once this is absolutely true. We decided that one of the sketches should be lit by a sort of candelabra that would actually be in the view of the camera. And we got in a terrible fight about whether it should be a goat or a sheep. And there was this almost vitriolic fight. 3 against 3, I think. And I remember halfway through thinking, this is absolutely insane.
Here's Michael Palin.
There was also the old, funny enough, the old sort of Frost Report divisions were there, in that Terry and I still wrote a lot of the material which needed to be filmed. We wrote with a visual sense, which John and Graham didn't really bother about at all. They really weren't concerned, as far as I could tell, about where things were shot or what we were wearing. It was the words and the play on the words that were most important. Whereas Terry and I would, begin a reading sometimes by setting the scene, a mountain side in Scotland, the mist is drifting over. These became parodied amongst the group as pan over idyllic countryside. And, as soon as I'd start reading something, oh, here we go, pan over idyllic countryside, the sun is shining, all that. So Terry and I's work was known as pan over idyllic countryside. But we had to set the scene sometimes. That was sort of part of it. Terry and I used to call a lot of John and Graham's writing what we call thesaurus writing, because the Cheese Shop is an absolute classic example of thesaurus writing. Just get a great list and use all the words in it. And it sounded terribly knowledgeable. It actually was very funny. Little lines that get forgotten, but John's character at the beginning of the Cheese Shop, where he says, I'm being the public library perusing Rogue Herries by Hugh Walpole. And clearly John and Graham must have been sitting there, and they might have seen that book up there, or Graham would have noticed it. I think it's a very Graham thing. Let's put Rogue Herries in a sketch. Rogue Herries in a comedy sketch? It's a lovely thing. Yeah. Perusing Rogue Herries, it's not information you need to know at all, but it's just, again, there's something about the words. And Python was just a great dumping ground for all these sort of half-connected thoughts and ideas. And I think hit a chord there, because a lot of other people, I think, had similar kind of education. And like we all do now, we know about all sorts of things without really being able to connect them. Just we read book reviews in papers, we go to a movie, we read a magazine, we pick out a book from the library. Rarely do we just concentrate on that, finish it, absorb it, stop, think about it, go on to the next. Yeah. So I think that's what Python was very good at, was clearing out all these sort of little dusty corners of knowledge.
But it juxtaposes intellectually.
Yes, and I think it's a sort of admission that we all know too much but understand too little. Yeah.